Jordan, do you want to open up in prayer?
I do. Father God, we're so thankful for today. God, we just invite you into this time. God, we just, we just ask for you to share through each one of us, God. As we all have a story to tell, God, and in business, God, it's your idea. And I know that you've given us all wisdom and insight that's different. God, and I just pray, Lord, that we have hearts to receive from each person, God. And God, for those who watch after the fact, Lord, I just pray, Lord, that they have open ears and open minds and a soft heart to receive. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Well, guys, any news from anybody? Anything interesting going on or any news?
Well, I've got a job offer. One of the most unusual ones, but nevertheless.
Wow, that's amazing.
Good, excellent news.
Great job.
What are you going to be doing, and who's it for?
That's who is it for? That's for kind of a group of companies that's called a trilogy. That's an easier question to answer. What I will be doing is not sure. Because this company actually follows the business model I do not quite understand. So kind of the typical private equity company, what it does is it basically buys underperforming businesses, kind of buys struggling businesses, and then tries to get the very best out of these businesses, kind of to grow, to clean them up, to perform the very best ideas. So this one is very unique because it starts at the same point. It basically just buys struggling businesses, kind of the businesses that are underperforming. Then it stabilizes them, and then it like literally just leaves them as is. They do not try to improve them. They do not try to grow them. They just like milk them, and some of them will eventually die. Not because this is the goal, but just because there is not much attention being paid to the business, and they just die and like whatever. And somehow this whole idea of just buying a whole bunch of businesses, trying to stabilize them and kind of leave them in one big bucket and trying to milk this bucket is profitable. To me, it's still a little bit of kind of a mystery why it's profitable, but
yeah,
I'll have to start and figure it out.
Well, and you never know what you might be able to, you may be able to help them think in a different way too. You never know.
Yeah. So my role would be to basically help 50 more to add 50 more companies into this bucket. So they're just buying them in bulk. I mean, they're not buying them like once per month. They're buying them one per week.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow. That's
and
awesome.
so they have somehow developed the model that instead of like buying these companies and try to kind of focus the attention and get the very, very best out of every acquisition, let's just buy these companies in huge bulk. Let's make some minor improvements and then just kind of put them in a huge pile and try to milk this pile. And again, to me, it's counterintuitive why it works, but well, it works.
Yeah.
So we'll have to start doing that and see what happens.
Can I just say though, I think it's kind of fun. I mean, in a way, the fact that you can be involved in quite a few, in quite a number of them, is kind of fun. Seems fun to me.
Yeah. So I'm not. I'm not really sure what it's going to be doing, but I do know that it kind of goes back to the memories of what made me move to Texas. Is that I moved with my boss and the boss of my boss, and I just really love those people.
Okay.
And I hear the same story. I'm not really sure what I'm going to be doing and what the company is doing and why it's making money. But I interviewed with my boss and the boss of my boss, and I just love them. So let's just try to do something together and see what happens.
Wow. Well, congrats. When do you start?
Thank you. Next Monday.
Yep.
What size businesses are they buying if they're buying that many?
They are buying between $5 and $10 million in, I guess, revenues.
Yeah. of EBITDA or something like that?
Well, so from what I understand, that they are buying struggling businesses. So if I
Okay.
were to guess, they are buying businesses with zero, might be even negative EBITDA. But
Okay.
because one of the questions I asked them is that it seems that what you guys are doing is really not kind of a patented technology. So if you figure the way how to make money, how do you protect kind of other people coming and eating your lunch? And the answer was like, what we are doing is so not sexy that nobody else wants to do it. We just basically roll up the sleeves and do it. That's. I'll have to see whether this is the answer or not. But it seems that they're just buying kind of in bulk stuff that doesn't work, somehow clean it up and make the money out of it. Again, to me, it's a little bit of a mystery how it's going to work, but you never know before you try.
Very cool.
Are you working as part of a team, like finding businesses, or
No. For me, the businesses would actually be given. They would just basically come to the plate, and there would be 4 of us with identical position. So I would not be the only one. So there would be kind of 4 guys with the exact same title, and it would be on our plate to kind of manage this inflow of acquisitions.
Yes. That's so exciting. Yay.
Proud of you, man.
Yeah, congrats.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Love that. How do they find the companies?
I do not know.
Okay.
I don't know much about the business. Again, if you would tell me that there is a hypothetical company that does this, I would not believe you. But with Trilogy Group, I mean, you can go and there are articles in Forbes about those people, so they're real.
Okay.
I mean, if I didn't open Forbes and if Forbes didn't say, well, okay, this is this group of companies and it is doing what it's doing, I would say that you are trying to kind of fake me and kid me. But I mean, Forbes is Forbes, right? So if Forbes says it works, so somehow it works. I don't really understand how it works. So to me, one of the first mysteries is kind of take a couple steps into the process and see what really happens there.
Wow. So great. Good deal. Well, obviously that's a major answer to prayer. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Jordan, any updates?
So with cleanup, we had our first official volunteer orientation. And so we had about, 25 to 30 total people who came out and getting oriented and getting excited and starting to sign up. And so that is a huge thing for cleanup. It's also big for me, gaining some assistance in kind of the day-to-day stuff so we can grow. With JL, it's doing great. Have some great ideas, and we're just kind of putting those in action. And families still need lots of prayer.
Yeah. Hey, can I share my screen?
Yeah. Good.
All right. I'm just tracking everybody's stuff down here. Paul, any news or updates?
No, not really. Everything's pretty good so far.
Okay. Yeah. Have you cooked anything recently or baked anything recently that you can report?
No. Just for my kids.
What'd you cook?
Oh, several stuff. Like last couple of days was raspberry pie.
Wow. Raspberry pie. Okay.
That's cool.
Very cool. Cooking with the kids. Good. Mine is, I keep interviewing for jobs. I've got several conversations that are going. So, I'm hopeful that one of those will be the one. I'm a little bit worried because I've got 5 conversations going at the same time. And, some of them are a little more preferable than others. And so I'm kind of worried about feeling like I need to take an offer from a second best situation when one that's a little bit better or maybe a lot better could materialize around the corner. That's a serious dance to be thinking about. So it's a good problem in a sense that there are several conversations now, but it's also a concern. What I'm leaning on with that is that I've prayed, this whole 6 months, I've just prayed that the Lord would make it clear, open doors, closed doors, and all that stuff. So I'm not too fixated on it. You may have heard me talk before you joined or after you joined the call. Probably didn't. I don't think you guys were on yet. But I was telling Jordan how I had cooked some ribs. And so that was a fun thing. I just did that tonight. They were really good. I got 2 slabs of baby back ribs from Walmart. And all I did was kind of coated them in salt and pepper and garlic powder and a few other things. Some Splenda, because I don't want to use, I'm on keto, so I'm not going to use actual brown sugar. And I cooked them covered up in foil for 5 hours at 350, and they pretty much fell off the bone. So that was outstanding. Yeah. I just enjoyed those a little while ago. So that's my cooking. It's not with the kids. My kids are all over the place right now. They're a little bit older, so that's my update. We wanted to talk about tonight working through doubt in our typical roundtable fashion. Lately, we've kind of disconnected the podcast content because we're trying to make this, business, but also more spiritual. Podcast kind of necessitates that it's, neutral, maybe with some traces of spiritual from time to time. But tonight they're actually the same because it's super relevant for, secular or spiritual for sure. So anyway, working through doubt is kind of the title. I think it makes sense for Jordan. I'll probably tell a story soon, but I think it kind of makes sense since Jordan he had the idea. Maybe he can kind of unpack what was happening.
Yeah. Let's not forget about, you kind of had a topic as well that we had talked about earlier.
Like the desert stuff?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to go first or second. I definitely want to bring it up.
Yeah.
You want to go?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So literally from, what's interesting is I didn't have a title, but in my devotions today, I kind of had, the Lord is doing a great job of tailoring the things that I read in my Bible in a year that kind of, and then kind of he's pulling things out that match my situation. And, I'm having to, I had a bad night last night. It was very down. I was very down last night. In spite of the fact that I've got some activity built up, I've had it, Now I say I've had it. That was kind of like 24 hours ago. I'm fine right now. But I have had those seasons where, I've had it. And so, this morning in my devotions, I was meditating a lot and thinking about the story of David and how he rose to finally become a king. And that's been a very slow journey as I've been reading it in those little Bible in a day chunks. And I think it was even a worse slow revelation for him. He was anointed king, and then, he did a lot of good, but then Saul tries to throw a spear at him. I know how that feels. I mean, in my last company, to be honest, I had that exact revelation come to me of the spear one day after an incident. And I was doing all this good stuff, and I had that exact same feeling one day. In fact, that story itself came to me that day. So there's a long gap of time between God's promise to David and him being anointed in his dad's house in the presence of all his brothers and when he actually ascended to king. And so the in-between time was a lot of desert, a lot of wilderness, living in rocks and caves, gathering a bunch of criminals to him, 600 in number eventually. Some of them were real rascals. Some of them ended up being noble, I think. But, gathering a bunch of people around him, going through some pretty harsh times. So, he can certainly question God and but how does he stay working through doubt, or how do I stay working through doubt, because I've got a promise and I've got a destination and a goal and whatever, but how do I stay working through doubt? And that's not just for job seekers. That's for people who are business builders. That's for people who are career professionals. That's for people who are project managers. That's for people who, run a nonprofit or a ministry. How do you work through doubt? And so that's kind of the topic of the day, but I'll give you a quick pep talk. And I did a LinkedIn video about this today as well, which is that it's really easy to, during a protracted time where you're walking through a desert, to look at the rattlesnake that you just crossed paths with, to feel the heat and the dryness on cracking your skin, and the sunburn, and to experience the lack of water and thirst and all the other things that can happen in a desert scenario, getting poked by a cactus or whatever. It's really easy for that moment you can feel that that's permanent. And there's something about human psychology that we have a talk track that can happen. And it's a well-known fact that in the psychological world, there's a thing called automatic negative thoughts. Some of those, as a believer, you would know some of those can be demonic, of course, but there's also just negative thoughts that happen. Absolutely. And so it's really important that we don't buy into the negative thoughts, and we don't let a thought that happens to us or a circumstance, a desert that we see, tell us that you're always going to be in the desert. You're always going to be walking through the valley of the shadow of death. You're never going to leave this. You are a shadow. You are dead. And interpreting life and circumstance as a identity for yourself, or even if you fall and you stumble in an area of sin, letting those thoughts and the enemy and your own doubts or whatever, cast you as that sin, or you are a sinner. No, you're a son, or if you're listening later, you're a daughter. You're not that thing. And so I think the challenge is to walk through doubt and to work through doubt, without having these feelings grip our soul and our thoughts and say, this is who you are, and it'll always be this way, and you're worthless, and all those thoughts that come up. So yeah, that's the self-talk that I had today in my devotions. It was really a Holy Spirit thing. But it helped me a lot, gave me a lot of courage, and it was certainly better than my evening last night. So it's a long, long story. But that's kind of why when Jordan said working through doubt might be a good topic, immediately it resonated with me, because literally that was my devotion today, and literally I needed this yesterday. So I'll pass it over to you.
Yeah, it's super relevant. And I know for me, as we were getting ready for the podcast and I was taking a moment and just quieting myself, that was one of the first things that pops into my head. And it was probably because it pops in my head all the time about doubt in business. Not am I successful overall, but did I succeed today? Did I fail today? Was I, productivity's kind of around the corner, but it's the doubt of, this is going wrong. All of these things, and for me, I know that running a small business, but running a nonprofit and some being a part of this group and another group that I lead on Wednesday nights, you evaluate, and you're looking, this is what I want to accomplish today. This is what goals are. And then you look and it's, I got 30 things on the plate today and I only accomplished 2 things. Was I successful? Did I fail today? How am I going to look to tomorrow? Then you start getting in this kind of cycle of, I had so much on my plate today, I'm pushing it to tomorrow. Well, that plate's already full. And so then you just get into this, maybe I'm not cut out for business. Maybe I'm not cut out to run this nonprofit or run this business. Maybe I need to be in a different role. Maybe I need to go back to the corporate role because I'm not capable of running my own business. These are just things that come through me all the time. And so we talk through some symptoms that are listed up there, and then we're kind of talking through how do we, symptoms. Howie gave a great example during the podcast of, if you woke up one day and you had pain in your foot or pain in your stomach or something like that, maybe you deal with it for a certain amount of time, but there comes a threshold where you say, I have to have this addressed by somebody with a different skill set, a different knowledge base. And so you seek advice, you seek outside counsel to deal with it. And I think that's kind of the motto to deal with doubt is it's a symptom, and sometimes you wash it away. Sometimes you just push it off and you say, hey, that's kind of normal. But after a duration of time, sometimes you have to go through the next step. You have to go seek outside advice. You have to go, sometimes you just have to go look at yesterday, and say, did what happened yesterday, did what happened last month, and what happened last year, is what I'm feeling today valid based upon previous history. So I think we can walk through the rest of that, but that's kind of where the gist of this is coming from.
No, I thought it was good. I normally let you guys go first. I'm going to go ahead and jump in though, because I have some thoughts on listening to the symptoms. So, the symptom of having the doubt, right? So when you listen to that symptom, Jordan kind of unpacked that sometimes there's a real issue, right? And we're given a brain, and so just because we're saying don't let those thoughts tell you you're a loser or you're not smart or it's always going to be this way or whatever. I like the fact that Jordan kind of unpacked for us. Take the seed of that. I mean, the doubt itself. I mean, don't just be so positive that I don't do any self-analysis. You know what I mean? Take the seed. So I'm not gonna even add a note with my name on it. I'm just gonna unpack. I'm just gonna add to his here on the screen, which is that I just feel like that's a really good advice. Like, I mean, just, if your foot hurts for 1 second, fine. But if your foot does chronically hurt, then go to the doctor or, just take it seriously. I mean, funny enough, I have a foot thing right now with a plantar's wart. Apparently it's a plantar's wart. And so I'm using these stupid little discs that it takes weeks, I think, to eventually get that out of there. But I don't want to go have surgery because I've had that when I was a kid and it really hurts. So I literally have a foot issue. So that's a funny coincidence. But anyway, I think that's good. Listen to the symptom. Dennis, any thoughts on, in self-doubt on this first point of, listening to the symptoms?
No, not much to add to what have already been mentioned.
Yeah.
Do you feel like and I'm going to ask everybody just because I think it's helpful for each of us who are currently on, but I think it's helpful for everybody who listens afterwards. Do you have to deal with or do you experience self-doubt? Dennis?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So it's one of those things that just brings common ground because I know for me, a lot of times I feel like I'm the only one who feels this way. And to be able to share that, no, I'm not, that it's a great way to make sure we're on the team here. So
I think, to that point, I mean, there's a reason why the Bible in Hebrews talks about don't forsake the assembling of yourselves together. And that's because I'm sure each one of us are going to admit what Dennis just did. And I'll admit it right now, I'll take my turn. Yeah, I have that self-doubt as well. And, from time to time, for sure. And even if I don't have, I do have some self-doubt, but I also have situational doubt. Like, I feel like I'm a highly competent sales manager, to be honest, to small groups. So I'll say it to a small group. And yet, my situational doubt, just because I'm confident doesn't mean that I can articulate that or that I will run into the right job. You know what I mean? So it's like there's multiple layers of doubt that can hit you, even if you may have a certain degree of confidence you could still have situational doubt, right? And then I do have self-doubt too on certain topics, no doubt about it. What about you, Paul? Do you ever have that? Any of those feelings?
Oh yeah, all the time.
And the
um,
thing is, like, we would see you as a very as an outsider, we would see you as a very put together, very intelligent person. And yet even you have those same
oh
thoughts.
yeah. I'm just a regular person like anybody else, you know. And my doubts are in everywhere, like in at family, at work, uh, even at like I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm on the Team USA for duathlon, so I'm an athlete.
What?
Oh,
So
wow. Did not know
even at
that.
that level, so yeah.
Yeah.
So
What is a
yeah, so
duathlon? Tell us what that is.
it's a run bike run similar to triathlon, but
Okay.
instead of the swimming,
That's from me.
you do the run twice. So you
Okay.
run, you bike, and then you run again.
Wow. I had no idea. That's very cool.
Yeah, I used to do triathlon, but I realized that I was more competitive in duathlon, so that's why I do
Okay.
duathlons better.
Wow. That's very cool.
You should
So
be
even
like
though you,
you should be like a decathlete, and then just like add in like baking a pie. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
you'll win every time. The gold medal.
That's right.
Sorry,
Raspberry
go
Pi
ahead.
sounds pretty good, by the way.
Yeah.
That sounds pretty awesome. So, how do you feel about, Dennis didn't have a lot to add. He kind of resonated with this that we already wrote down here. What would you add in terms of when you're trying to work through doubt, you're trying to persevere through doubt? Do you have anything to add to this topic here of listening to that feeling, listening to that symptom?
I mean, my honest reaction is that if you are not working through the doubt, then there is something fundamentally wrong, because most likely you're just not pushing the envelope hard enough, right? So
Ah,
the doubt comes
oh,
is when
wow.
when you're trying to jump over your head, right? If I'm doing something I'm confident and comfortable doing, then well, doubt will not come
Nice.
because I know how to do it.
Wow.
So to me, doubt is not only something that's kind of wrong and that I should fight against. I mean, doubt is a normal indicator that
Wow.
yes, you are trying to push the envelope hard enough, and
Yeah.
you are trying to go beyond what you think is reasonable or achievable,
Yeah.
and that's where the doubt comes. So to me, the self doubt is nothing bad. It's not
Yeah.
nothing to kind of try to fight against.
Wow. Because if we're not, maybe, for example, in my job search, one of the jobs is intimidating. Actually, two of them are intimidating. And so maybe, and I guess you could say that's self doubt. I hadn't thought about it in those terms. It must be though. So maybe if I took a job that was less intimidating, I'm being too comfortable and I'm not pushing the envelope enough.
I agree. I definitely
Yeah,
agree. So
that's interesting. Wow.
Um,
Paul, anything to add to that?
So the other thing about doubt is that usually comes tied in with um, the what's it called? Uh, Being afraid to fail.
Yeah.
And and one of the things that we need to be comfortable with is failure is an option, and usually by failing we learn, and when we learn, then we not when we learn a way how not to do it. So next time when it
Mm,
comes, so we gather that experience so we can apply it next time.
yeah.
So if we have the, and I say this, but it's easier said than done. But if we have that attitude, when that doubt comes, and then you probably are you're setting yourself for more success. If you have that ability, like, no, I'm not afraid of failure. I know that failure will be an option. So what? Let's do it.
Wow. I wish somebody would have told me that when my startup failed, back around 2015 or so. I wish somebody would have told me that failure, it's okay to be, failure is good. We learn from it. It crushed me for years, honestly. And, when in fact, I have so much authority on, a certain set of categories now because I went through that I never would have had before. So that's a great message that I think people need to hear, Paul. Appreciate that. What about, when one of the symptoms that Jordan gave me to write down here was not getting enough done. And he kind of, I'll let him go first. He kind of touched on that a minute ago.
Mm.
What's that feeling and what's happening there?
Yeah, I think, and I think this is an addition to what Dennis was saying, is that, sometimes you're pushing the envelope, and you're saying there's a lot, and, I'm going to maximize, and I'm going to delegate, and I'm going to automate, and I'm going to do all these things. And, you're just you're not making headway, or you're not getting anything done, And so I know that's where sometimes some doubt comes in is, am I making the headway I want to make? Am I being successful in this overall task? But then some of it is, and this is the thought where it kicks in for me is, should this even be on my plate? And it's kind of the same thing that Paul was saying is that, and the example that came to my mind is that if there was a rock in my shoe, right, and I stepped on it and it had some pain, some discomfort, but I just kept dealing with it and dealing with it and dealing with it, it's still there. Whereas if I just pause for a moment and assess the situation, I can see, there's a rock there, dump it out of my shoe, and now I can move through. So that's kind of how I deal with some of this doubt. I deal with the symptoms or deal with, am I getting enough done, is pause and look, should this even be a priority? It's wearing me out, bringing stress or anxiety on me. Should it even be on my plate? Yeah, okay, it stays. And so now I need to figure it out. Or no, it doesn't need to be there. So now I can move it on, And I think Paul, you make a living doing that as the master of scrums. So
Yeah.
you probably have much better intellect or a way to share that. But
So I think he just nominated you to go next.
Yeah, just thinking about this. And it's kind of having the attitude of, have you ever heard the concept of focusing on outputs instead of outcomes?
Nope.
And I mean, it just reminds me that if we are constantly thinking that we're not getting enough done, is are we actually focusing on outputs, meaning getting a lot of stuff done that doesn't have value, or just the smart stuff that really uh, add value? Because then and we will have a more sense of accomplishment, if that makes sense.
Mm. Okay. Got it. So are you saying that we can sometimes focus too much on the activity and the output of getting stuff done versus, selective things that are really important?
Correct. So a typical example is when we have people that are reporting to us, or we work with teams, and we are focused on resource utilization, which is a very bad word for me. Because here's the deal. I mean, if you are focusing, okay, how much this person can get done. I mean, then and we're humans, so we're gonna play the system then, as opposed to, okay, what if I focus on only the things that add value, because those are the things that will help us win the game in the long term.
Yep. Good. Awesome. Good. Dennis, how do you manage through these feelings? Sometimes maybe not getting enough done.
Well, to me, it's a matter of perspective. My goal every day is to be the best I can be, and how much is getting done, it really doesn't matter, because in essence, if there were like 20 things on my list and I was the best I could be, and I've done two, I mean, I've done two. I couldn't have improved it. It just, maybe I overestimated what's possible. But if I've done two things and I knew that I was capable of doing three, then, well, yeah, there's something to learn and kind of to get better. So unfulfilled parts of two lists, I mean, to me, it's normal. It's not nothing to be stressed about, because you have to remember that, and I'm not sure whether it's real or like a made up phrase, but there is a phrase that no single person on their deathbed said, "Well, I wish I spent more time in the office."
Yeah.
Right. So people, you can spend as much time in the office as you want, but at the end of the day, you would never regret that you didn't spend enough.
Yeah.
So you might regret that you didn't fulfill your dreams, right? You wanted to start your own business for your entire life and you never got to it. People would regret that.
Yeah.
But that people spend like 10 hours in the office and they could have spent 12, and people don't regret about that at the end of their life. So
Yeah.
Things will get unfulfilled. This is just a matter of fact. So my job is to be the best I can do, not really to tackle everything that's on the list per se.
That's good. What I told Jordan when we were chatting about this earlier on the topic of not getting enough done is kind of a reverse perspective of the question. So I want to like take this. Let's say that this question, not getting enough done, and that's causing doubts, and that's, something that we have to work through because the topic is working through doubt. So if I take that as the negative, my perspective was to flip that into the positive and say a few things about that. If I'm not getting enough done, then that means that I am the kind of person who, I can seriously give you like several things on this, and I'm going to do that. If I'm not getting enough done, it shows me that I'm the kind of person that wants to get stuff done. I'm the kind of person that's accountable. I'm the kind of person that's smart enough to know that there are things that can be done. I'm the kind of person that's organized enough that I wrote them down or that I planned for them or something. I'm the kind of person that has a certain level of tenacity, and I'm driven. And I'm the kind of person that's dissatisfied. So it's kind of like everything else, is not that's untrue. It's just that we want to make sure, and it kind of feeds into what Dennis said a little bit, as he's giving himself grace because he's trying to do his best instead of focusing on the tyranny of the list. Mine's compatible with that because mine is saying, also be glad that you have the ability to shuffle things around and prioritize, and the fact that it even matters to you will be a driver of success. Literally, we can be thankful in that moment, So mine is partly just like it's a way to feed into your own grace in some way.
Yeah, I think I said, or I had an analogy on the podcast of not getting enough done can be like biting off more than I can chew. Well, I don't want to live a life or have a business career of just continually biting off more than I can chew. And like Paul said, I'm hoping that as I bite off more than I can chew, or, and I'm learning to prioritize or whatever, that I'm learning to evaluate and say, this is, and kind of what Dennis said, this is what I can get done today. And this is it, and be able to have a stretch goal, but have it be a manageable stretch goal, not have it be so overwhelming, that if any of that makes sense.
It does. Yep. Cool. Oh yeah. And then I'll tell them what I told you. So as I was at IntelliMagic or whatever, my last company before that, I tend to look back, and even though I didn't get everything done on a day-to-day basis, that stuff kept having to get rolled over to the next day or whatever. And sometimes I would cut it if it turns out it wasn't important or whatever. But usually I would just roll it over. The fact that you have a list, they say that there's statistics about people who have goals, written goals, are more successful than people that don't. So if you've got a written goal, you're using your calendar, you're being organized, you're rolling things over that didn't get accomplished, then over time, I have found that I look back in the rearview mirror and I see that bigger transformations and bigger changes do happen. And so it's like, it kind of goes back to the desert comment. If I just judge the whole day or my whole entire life because I walked by a rattlesnake and it scared me, or because I didn't have any water in the desert for a day, right? And if I judge because of a circumstance, a short circumstance, if I judge my entire existence or my entire whatever, or I let my mentality be controlled by that moment, then that's a mistake. And so I feel like the day is too, or even the week is too small of a metric or a key performance indicator to judge myself on. And so that's why for me, what I told you earlier, Jordan, which I'll tell these guys, is that it's not usually weeks, it's usually months that I can do that look back. But if you work hard and you work through the doubt and you keep going and you do stay organized and you keep pushing it forward, even if you have to snooze that a lot, actually looking back, you do find quite a lot of change over time. Yeah. So don't judge yourself on one day or 1 week.
Yeah.
Give them, I'm sorry, I'm having to let you start every one of them because a lot of these bullets came from you. But I am going to do that again here. So talk a little bit about this one. Am I moving the needle? Am I making a difference? What was going on in your heart when you said that?
So, as a business owner, you have goals for yourself. I have goals for my clients. And then obviously they have goals for me. And the same thing as a nonprofit founder, leader. I have goals for the nonprofit. I have aspirations. I have goals for those that we serve. And so, am I moving the needle? Am I making the difference? I know for me, and Howie, I'm going to go far more spiritual now.
Well, this is the format, yeah.
So, I know that God's given us an incredible capacity, of what we can do. And my personal goal is to live at that capacity because it's attainable. Jesus did it, and we're able to do that. A lot of times our ability is our own, we're lowering our ability, not, we're bringing the ceiling down to us instead of bringing the floor up to the ceiling. And so I know that. And so I know that there's so much more that can be done or could be done. And so it's that constant evaluation of, God, is this what was supposed to be done? Or is this the maximum difference being made? And involving him in that aspect. But I know that this one really pokes at me a lot. Again, just because I know that I have clients and I want to make sure that I'm making the difference that they want made. I know that, there's 1,000 people that clean up serves a week. Am I doing the maximum good and serving them to the best of the ability that I can? And it's just on my heart that I want to be able to do it.
Yeah.
So.
good. I mean, I'll go next because I want to also do the opposite on this one, right? So, I'm going to do the exact mirror of this and say, again, if you have that heart in a certain topic in your company to move the needle, or in your ministry to make a difference, then that's actually a pretty good sign that your desires and your purpose and your activity might be aligned. Okay. I mean, the fact that you care about the fact they're asking the question, isn't, again, we don't want to just act like every negative thought should be ignored because it's negative, right? I mean, in this case, the negative thought is accountability. You're trying to be accountable. And so I think this is where, you want to ask your father. That's what I would do. I mean, I do all the time. I mean, that's what I would exactly do is just say, turn, and I talk about this in the sales metaphor of turning that internal question that you've got, and this would be great for project management too, Paul, but turning that doubt, the thing that no one's talking about, just go ahead and ask it, be the first stupid one, that got it out there on the table. But in this case, I think, having those doubts is not a terrible, I just want to encourage you, Jordan, but encourage anybody listening too, that, it's so sweet that you want to ask that. And I just want to commend you that you want to make a difference. And I want to commend you that, you want to move the needle. And so I think that's really, really great. All that I would do is flip it a little bit and say, we can ask, and I know you already do ask your father that. So, I mean, I know you do, but we all want to hear that stuff. And that, I think that's what we each want to do, is make sure that we cooperate with our Heavenly Father, who just as much as you delight in your son, and you're so great with him, Jordan. But it's just like, God loves it when we're interacting with him and, bringing concerns to him. So all I would add to that is, from my comments would be, it's good. It's a good sign to ask that question and then know where to take the question. To our Father. What about you, Paul? What do you have to add to when you have that question, in your job or your ministry or whatever, with your marriage or, anything, am I moving the needle? Am I making a difference? What do you think people should do with that?
Sometimes I think it also requires a lot of courage. Because, I mean, what's the right thing to do, but it requires to do a step that you don't want to go through. Okay, and so it's, again, this is another thing that is easier said than done. But having the courage, to do the right thing, or to speak, for the things that should happen, will definitely help us moving the needle and make a difference. And again, it's harder done than said, but it's something that we need to learn how to be courageous.
It's good. Yeah, because honestly, if you don't do that, then no one may do it.
Yep.
And the project could be really in trouble. Mm-hmm. And you could lose millions of dollars just because everybody didn't see it. You're the only one that saw it. And it may be that the Holy Spirit was tapping you on the shoulder and you just spun up an extra 250 AWS instances needlessly because of a faulty load balancing model or projection, and you didn't agree with it, but you're too afraid of going against the crowd. Stupid example, and it's an IT one. But I think, using that question and saying, can I, courage is something that is kind of a hard hard thing to do. So that's, we can pray for that.
Mm-hmm.
There is no telling, by the way, IT projects or business endeavors. For example, what if somebody would have told me, Brian, you're going to lose $125,000. This website, you've done no testing on human behavior to see if people will behaviorally use this site. You haven't done. No one did that. Seriously. And it's okay because it's like you said earlier, the failures are good to have and learning, and all that stuff. But now I know, do a minimum viable product. It's like now I know, and that's it's okay. So that's really good stuff. Dennis, what would you add to this topic?
I honestly don't have much to add other than what I mentioned on the previous topic. I mean, you just do the very best you can do, and the needle moves as much as it does based on your efforts. So I regret if I could have done something and I didn't, but if I did the best I could do, and the needle didn't move too much, then what else could I have changed? That's kind of my perspective. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think with Paul's example, I think you've probably run into that before, where sometimes making a difference isn't just going along with what everybody's saying. I'm sure you've run into that a lot because you've had to fix businesses. So, the previous owner or the middle management was used to doing things a certain way, but it's your purpose to change things.
That's right. Yep. And sometimes they change, sometimes they don't.
Yeah. And so there's certain courage that you've probably had to develop a certain thick skin to be able to figure out how to have that hard conversation.
Well, once you do it for several years in a row, it's no longer called courage.
Yeah.
It's just called basically the day-to-day life.
Just called day-to-day life. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha. What about this question? This kind of goes into, some of these are overlapping, by the way. But, am I good enough, smart enough? Here's what this feels like to me, Jordan. Okay. It feels to me like this question, am I good enough, smart enough, capable enough? That's something that you say at the end of the day when you didn't get enough done. It seems like these are very linked. These seem to have a fairly close relationship.
Oh, I'm sure this is again just a continuous thought in the order in which I deal with them, and so.
Yeah. So, how do you handle that? That question that comes up, so you can work. The goal of this whole thing is to continue to work through doubt, and so this is one of the doubts. This is one of the symptoms that's coming up, right? And this one is a little bit cruel. This is after a hard day, or after a few weeks, or after maybe you did mess up. In my last company, I wasn't doing a good job in the pandemic when we went from home tracking my people, and it turns out my reps weren't making very many calls, and I got really called on the carpet for that. And so I literally, now in the future, I'll be very careful to have KPIs and metrics that I can track, that to make sure that if we're in a work from home situation like this, that they're not derailed, blah, 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 blah. It's fine. And so I definitely learned from that failure, but we can ask these questions of ourselves. Am I good enough? Am I smart enough? And I think we can take current circumstances and kind of beat ourselves up a little bit,
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in this, am I good enough, smart enough, capable enough? That's also kind of relying on yourself and your abilities, where you should actually be relying on God's favor and God putting the ability in us to do stuff. So and I think we're all guilty of this because we're Superman, and we think that we can do everything. But and that's when we realize that we cannot do it, and then we are blaming ourselves, and then saying, "Am I good enough,
Yeah.
smart enough?" But in reality, is that we just need to recognize that everything that we have is because of God. Everything that we can do is because of Him. um, we should be asking God, how can, and this is even hard for me. I have this situation at work. How should I do? I mean, what can you give me? Can you guide me into do this, into do that? I know you can do it better than I can.
Mm. Wow, that's good. You're right. That's a very internal set of questions. and and it's really about what God and I can do together. Just like I told Dennis a little while ago with my job, where I'm judging some of the harder jobs that I'm looking at with fear with this question, and maybe I'm not. I'll kind of mix it with what you're saying, Paul, and maybe the question should be, what can I do with God's help?
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. Thank you.
Howie, you had asked like how I, and so I know that's kind of where we're heading to with your point of planning, persevering, partnering in mind. So I don't know if you just want to jump there and kind
Sure.
of allow all of us to kind of go through that, or.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so we can skip this one. I do want to touch on this one really quick before we jump into planning and persevering. This is a putting a voice. So to me, all I was saying, this one was one of mine. All I was saying here is that sometimes the thoughts in our head are kind of vague, but we have this dread, which, by the way, a vague thought can be demonic, just to let you know. That's a sign. It's not the sign, but it can be a sign that it's the enemy if it's vague. So it's really good to write that down if you can, and put some clarity on that. And when you see it on paper, it's a whole lot less scary than just this vague thing in your head accusing you or whatever. But yeah, journaling is really, really good for this. I journal every single day. I journal my prayers, actually. I literally type my prayers. Not all of them, because there's time of meditation where I'm just sitting there. But I structure some of it as written prayers. So I think for me, putting a voice to the doubts and writing things down is really good. So we can move on to the next one, but that's what that was about. I'll just call it prayer and journaling. But yeah, planning, persevering, and partnering. Were you saying you wanted me to start on that, or did you want to start on that?
No, yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So how do we work through doubt? How do we persevere and grow through doubt? So, one of the things that I've done during this time of difficulty, in addition to persevering, is I've actually been involved in quite a bit of building. So I've been building tools and resources and knowledge bases and things that I normally don't have time to do. And so, building when you're down kind of has the benefit of keeping you busy, keeping you working on something productive, and also the fact that the downtime is temporary. And then when you come out of that, whatever you're working on and planning and building, you have that as an outcome. So that is pretty positive. So, if you, in your company, if you're struggling with a situation or a turnaround, Dennis, or a project, Paul, or you need growth, Jordan, a planning exercise can be really, really helpful, and a planning and a modeling and a building exercise, and just, tackling the problem head on instead of letting the doubt become vague. Just creating a plan to address it has been, it's helpful for me, not only during this job search, but in my last company, tackling some of the harder problems with a plan. Persevering for me, it has a lot to do with my faith, but also I tend to work harder when I'm down because I don't know what else to do. And then partnering for me, for me, our idea on this word here was delegation. I'm terrible about that, but I would just say I've just started to crack on that. I just started in my last company. I just started to be a little bit better at delegating. Okay, but it's a weakness of mine for sure. But yeah, that's how I address working and building through doubt is planning, persevering. I could easily add praying, which is kind of my persevering, and then partnering, which I'm terrible at, but it's on my radar. So that's what I would say about this. Didn't write anything down though.
So for me, it's about discovering the truth, and that's how I combat each one of these different symptoms that we talked about. And some of it, I'm going to use Brian's 3 Ps, but some of it is you go back to planning. So if I have the pain, if I have the symptom, okay, so then I'm going to go back and assess my planning, assess that aspect of it, okay? Some of it is now, okay, so I've planned, I've done my due diligence on that side, and still have the pain. So now I'm going to persevere, I'm going to push to see if I'm just not doing my part, right? And then it's the partnering. And the partnering can be, something like coming to a group and seeking wise counsel, seeking advice, or just reaching out to one of you guys individually and saying, "Hey, have you guys experienced this? Can I just share this with you and just get your immediate thoughts on it?" Some of it is, again, just like Paul said, and this is the most important one, and the one that often is done in quiet is, God, is this what you say about this situation?
Oh, that's good.
God, there's 100 things on my plate. And I know I shared this, I think it was almost a month ago now. God, there's 100 things on this plate, and it's getting ridiculous. And God's response to me was, give me the plate.
Give me the plate. Yep, I remember.
And so that's where a lot of this comes through. It's the doubt comes in, the thought about this or that or the other comes in, and then it's, God, what do you say about this situation? And it's not always positive. It's not positive affirmation. It's not power of positive thinking. It's sometimes there is a natural, there is something that is wrong. There is a rock in my shoe, and it needs to come out so that it doesn't keep happening. And so that's where, for me, is if there's a rock there, I want to find it. If there's not a rock there, then I'm going to find the truth to combat it. Does that make sense?
Yes. It's good. So we're kind of blending these last two guys. I could even add them. I could actually add them. No reason not to. It's our document, isn't it? What would you say about that? Some of these methods of addressing. Again, the topic is working through doubt, which all of us said in the beginning. We've all had that, and we do have, frequently have that, whether that's be situational doubt or self-doubt or both. So, Paul, what would you say in terms of, utilizing planning or persevering or partnering or working to discover the truth? What would you say to that?
I think the one that resonates more with that could add more value is the partnering part. And it goes back to the, you are the sum of who you surround, of the 5 people that you surround yourself with, and and if you have people that are complaining, are doubtful, they don't want to progress in life, I mean, most likely you also become that. So partnering with people that are wiser than you, that you can get advice for, I mean, definitely, I mean, you're always learning, so it's definitely something that I would, I mean eh, we should be seeking uh, every time.
Mm, yeah, that's good. Yeah, it's kind of not really talked about very much, but being really selective in friendship is actually a biblical principle. It's interesting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Dennis, what would you like to speak to any of those points there?
You're mute, Dennis.
Sorry. Yeah. So on this one, I will just fully concur with Jordan. Kind of get the God's perspective of what the plans are, and kind of persevere with them.
It's good. Yeah, because once you have heard from God, then perseverance is a lot easier. Once I have God says XYZ, it kind of gives me direction. It kind of tells me what to do. And I was reading today about Daniel, and he ran into opposition about eating the king's food, and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego did as well. And they said, let's do a test. Just test us for 10 days, And so they used, a bit of experimentation, and they wanted to see if, what God's will. They kind of put a fleece out before the Lord, to be honest, by doing that. And God gave them the direction that he was going to make them healthier than everybody else, eating actually less. And so the ability to ask God and, get God involved in our process and in our problem solving is great. And then then we can persevere in his promises. I'm really not trying to say everything with a P, but it's happening. Anyway, cool. Well, anybody else have anything to wrap up on the topic? We covered a lot of good stuff.
I try to think in a biblical perspective, so using your example earlier of David. So David gets anointed and he's a teenager, like not 17 or 18. I mean, he's a kid, right? And then, a couple of years goes by and he meets Goliath and has this massive achievement, but then goes right back to what he was doing, And so it's natural, I would think, that he's having doubts somewhere through here of when's this going to happen? Okay, now I'm serving the king. I'm playing the harp for him. It seems like, okay, God, this is going to be. I'm going to play the harp, and then it's now the next step I'm going to be king. Well, that's not what happened. The next step is now he's on the run. And he's on the run not for a little bit, for a long period of time. It's not. I think he's 40 or something like that.
Is that right?
Whenever he becomes king, yeah, there's a long duration.
Such a long time.
And you got to think that there's doubts in there. And again, he's writing these psalms, and so you can hear him questioning. You can hear him, saying, "God, what the heck?" But you can also hear him wrestling with, "But I know who you are, and I know what you said, and I'm going to keep going. I'm going to persevere. I'm going to do that." And so, it's, from my perspective, it's natural. I think we've all said it's natural. We all deal with it, but I think the severity of the doubt comes to, who do we involve in our doubt? Are we involving God in our doubt and allowing him to remove doubt? if need be, or allowing him to speak to that area. You know, I think it's natural, and I think it's common to wrestle. I think, and the lack of wrestling is a bad thing. If we're not wrestling with God about that, I think that's a bad thing. We're too comfortable. You know, or we're
Yeah,
just
like
out
what
of
Dennis said about that earlier, that where was it? You might be not pushing the envelope enough if you don't have some of that.
There's probably a better example of somebody dealing with doubt, you know, in that, but I don't know.
I think David, I mean, is probably the key example, but a similar one would be Joseph, for sure. You know, in Joseph's case, all he had was a dream. And he probably thought, well, it's metaphorical. At some point in his life, he was probably like, well, the sun, moon, and the stars bowing down to me probably was just, they'll respect me. Not like, I'll actually be a leader, you know. So, well, we can dive into prayer stuff, prayer and praise.